Welcome to the 2020 Fannie Awards! Hey, welcome one and all. It's the Fannie Awards. The legit award ceremony begins today. Welcome to this special two-day event. Thank you so much for coming. I know we're doing our special quarantine edition this year because 2020 had almost no movies at all, but we will find a way. So here's how this is going to work this year. Normally, I do my top 10 best movies of the year, interspersed with all the other peripheral awards. This year is going to work a little bit different. Today is going to be all about the peripheral awards themselves, and tomorrow I will tell you the top 5 best movies of 2020. But first of all, you're probably asking, what were the movies of 2020? Because there weren't a bunch. Well, here is a quick list of every 2020 movie that I ended up seeing before or in spite of the pandemic. Take a look. So first on the docket today, we're going to give out the award for Best Hero. 2020 is a year where we definitely needed heroes more than ever. So who filled those shoes the best? The nominees for Best Hero are Borat and Tutar from Borat, subsequent movie film. Cecilia Cass from The Invisible Man. Sonic from Sonic the Hedgehog. Joe Gardner from Soul. And Diana Wonder Woman Prince from Wonder Woman 1984. And the Fannie for Best Hero goes to Joe Gardner from Soul. The beautiful thing about Joe Gardner and his journey is that he is all of us, and his journey is all of ours. Despite the otherworldliness of Soul and its setting, the lessons that Joe learned in that movie and then in turn imparted onto us, the audience, are anything but out there and metaphysical. They are very uniquely and inarguably human to their very core. Joe's biggest problem is he fails to appreciate the beauty in the little things in life, and we all fall victim to that same short-sightedness at one point or another. So Joe was a perfect stand-in for the rest of us humans who sometimes have to stop and realize that, you know what, those flowers are worth taking the time to smell. But what's a good hero if we don't have some nasty person on the sidelines making things difficult for them? While the movie Soul didn't have a villain, so you can already scratch that one off the list, I still have 5 names here of 5 dastardly people who made life difficult for everyone else in their near vicinity. Let's take a look at the nominees for 2020's Best Villains. As usual, sometimes villains are secret, so spoilers ahead. Melanie from The Babysitter Killer Queen. Paul from The Five Bloods. Adrian Griffin from The Invisible Man. Dr. Robotnik from Sonic the Hedgehog. And Maxwell Lord from Wonder Woman 1984. And the evil Fannie goes to Paul from The Five Bloods. Paul is one of those villains that, depending on who you ask, might not even qualify as a villain, but when you really take a look at what this guy is all about, yes, he is a Vietnam vet who is shell-shocked and traumatized by what he saw in the war, particularly what he believes he caused in the war. But fast forward to the present day when the story takes place, and Paul is an angry, bitter, hateful man who refuses to talk to his son for petty reasons, walks around wearing a MAGA hat, treats the local Vietnamese people with racism and contempt for a war that they weren't even really part of, and carrying around just a general air of disdain and disregard for human life. Paul is extraordinarily sympathetic, but that doesn't make him any less of a villain in the eyes of this film. And the journey he goes on throughout The Five Bloods is powerful until the bitter, bitter end. And boy howdy, is that end ever bitter. Now it's time for this guy's personal favorite award, Best Original Concept. Remember, we're not judging the movie, we're judging the concept the movie introduces. What fresh new IP or fresh new idea was brought to the table that made me and everybody else around the world go, ah, neat. These lists are scant every year, but this being 2020, the list is even scanter. Thankfully, I managed to scrounge up 5 nominees, and they are Antebellum, The Five Bloods, Happiest Season, Onward, Soul, and the Fannie Award for Best Original Concept goes to Onward. Pixar is the undisputed lord and master of original concepts. Every time they bring a new one to the table, I am filled with delight. And Onward's no exception, man. Granted, this was not my favorite Pixar movie at all. In fact, I would put it really close to the bottom, next to The Good Dinosaur and Cars 2 and 3, etc. Onward was just a very underwhelming film for me in general. But the concept, this world they built, where magic and wonder and all the Dungeons and Dragons goodness that you might see in something like Beastmaster, that became sort of the prevalent mode of evolution. And as people evolved, so too did dragons and fairies and pixies and whatnot. And what it created was a really fun anachronism that I think could have been explored in a much better way than the movie did. Now, I don't mean to smack on the movie. Onward is fine. It's not bad. It's just fine. But I think it brought a much cooler new perspective and new idea to the table than something like Soul, which at the end of the day, I believe is a much better movie than Onward. So it's crazy how the two things can kind of balance each other out like that. Onward definitely won't be winning any awards for my best Pixar movies anytime soon, but in terms of creativity and new original IPs, 2020 was dominated by Onward. Congratulations, you purple fairy folk. I don't even remember what they were. Were they goblins? Somebody let me know if they were goblins. It's been a minute. That was actually the last movie I ever saw in a theater. I'm still waiting on being able to go back to one. But while we wait, let's talk about the most underrated motion picture. There's lots of great movies that come out, but they just fly under the radar like a drug smuggler trying to avoid attention from the feds. But they deserve better credit than they got. And again, we got a scant list, but I managed to whittle down 5 movies that I believe are better and should be talked about more and praised more than they have been. And the nominees are Antebellum, Happiest Season, The Invisible Man, Sonic the Hedgehog, Wonder Woman 1984. All of these movies got either no press or bad press when I think they all deserved good press. But which movie takes home the Fannie? Well, buckle up, because the award for most underrated film goes to The Invisible Man. Ooh, scary. I'm one of those people who was so friggin' excited for the Dark Universe reboot of the classic Universal Monsters because I loved it so much, and then Dracula Untold was bland and The Mummy was even worse. So it looks like that's not happening anymore. But then, along comes the damn Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss, and my God, did this movie ever friggin' rock. This is, I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now, this is the Dark Knight of monster movies. And I am flummoxed that it did not get enough praise as the year went on, especially because so few movies came out this year. If The Invisible Man had been buried under a pile of Marvels and DCs and James Bonds, then I could understand how it would get lost in the shuffle. But considering barely anything came out, I really don't understand why The Invisible Man is not being paraded on people's shoulders right now as one of the standout films of 2020. Unlike the titular villain himself, this movie can actually be seen. So please, for the love of God, see it. You will not be disappointed. And speaking of disappointing, now it's time to give out the Fannie Award for the most disappointing film of the year. What's it gonna be? I don't know. I didn't see a whole lot, so you might see nominees on this list that were nominated for other things because I only saw 15 movies, so there's gonna be some overlap. What are you gonna do? So, the nominees for the most disappointing film of 2020 are The Babysitter Killer Queen, Gretel and Hansel, Hubie Halloween, Mank, The Old Guard, and the shameful award for most disappointing film of the year is forced upon The Old Guard. When this hit Netflix late last spring, there was a buzz of excitement in the air, and I think that excitement has to be attributed to the fact that we weren't allowed to go to the movies anymore, because when I finally watched The Old Guard, I could not believe how bland the film was that I had just been forced to witness. This is gray cardboard. It is gray cardboard on dry styrofoam. That's what The Old Guard is. You have this admittedly cool concept where you've got these people running around and they're immortal. They can't die. Even if you shoot them with a bunch of bullets, they're like, oh, look at that. I got back up. I pulled the bullets back out. I'm still alive. And you've got Charlize Theron with this badass axe that she carries around. And then you just take that concept and that cool hero and you stick them in this bland modern setting where they're like, we have guns. We will shoot people with other guns until we outgun the people with guns and become the gunniest people to ever gun. Look at my guns. I cannot believe that something so bland even got made. But frankly, I mean, it makes sense that it's a Netflix movie. Whether or not coronavirus would have happened, this movie would have only existed on Netflix. It wouldn't have been a theatrical release. And that makes sense because I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Netflix, your original movies are bland as shit. So The Old Guard at least fits in with its surroundings. But my God, what a gray, flavorless experience that was. I will actually watch Hubie Halloween again before I watch Old Guard again. And that, as Adam Sandler would put it, is a thing. Something. Forgive me for that poor Adam Sandler performance, but it's more exciting than anything you see in The Old Guard. Well, that's the Peripheral Awards out of the way. Tomorrow, I will tell you the 10 best films I saw in the year of our Lord, or in this case, the year of our Dark Lord, 2020. See you tomorrow for the final day of our special quarantine edition, Fannie Awards.